Hello and welcome to Cruising and Musing. I am your host, Rob. Please hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to get to 50 subscribers so we can do live streams while we're rolling around. Take a question at a stoplight. Maybe even have people join in with super chats. Help put gas in these beasts I keep driving around. So that being said, we are in Studio B because Studio A is still waiting on a power steering fix. And if you've never tried to turn one of those land barges without power steering, oh man, it takes some doing. So for everyone's safety on the road, we are in Studio B till that gets fixed. So over the last day or so, I've released a number of videos, which is a lot altogether for me, and quicker than I planned on, but I had, cooked up a bunch of things I wanted to talk about, and somebody engaged with me, so I was like, I want to get these out. And one of the things I still have left that I want to talk about is what I see as being needed for the future of education. Things that we could change systematically that might help with the teacher shortage as a whole, with the tradition of American schools as a whole, with student accomplishment and achievement as a whole, and with learning gains and real learning coming back to the classroom again. So with that being said, let's get down into it. So the number one thing that I say doesn't make sense is that we are still kind of teaching to the past instead of teaching to the future. We are teaching kids to memorize information, which they're not going to retain, in any long term, if all they have to do is memorize it. And we're kind of teaching a curriculum that was designed for us overall. Like the big framework that all the new textbooks and everything fit into is still the framework of education that came around in the early 1900s. And we've just learned so much since then. We've learned about child development, multiple intelligences, the Howard Gardner stuff, Bloom's taxonomy of needs, that sort of thing. And I really think that we could do with like a top-down restructuring of the way that we approach bringing kids their information, simply by, number one, reordering our curriculum to where instead of trying to teach everyone everything and then having to reteach it later because we were trying to go past what they considered important at the time or past what they were ready to learn. For example, it's really cute seeing 7-year-olds put on a little play about Abraham Lincoln and 7 years ago, but when they're 7 and they're at that age where they can't entirely tell you, not 100% of them at least, can tell you that the same amount of glass or the same amount of liquid when you pour from a tall glass to a short glass is still the same amount of liquid. They're going to think it's less because it's in a smaller glass. What's the point in teaching them that kind of history when they're at that point developmentally still? Wouldn't it be better to instead focus them on language acquisition, which young children excel at? Young children learn new language faster than any other group of people because their brains are still not full of the neural pathways tied to their old language. So they can learn multiple languages together and be multilingual, which is just such an incredible advantage and useful skill to have to begin with, that we're really not doing them any favors trying to force them to learn abstract concepts like math when they could be learning that. Why are we going to bother teaching them about Lincoln before they even know what Lincoln's words mean? In the depth of the context. Wouldn't it be better to, focus on what they're ready for and let them expand on that than get them to, say, middle school and then do a deep dive on the, U.S. Civil War, slavery, the outcomes, the deeper meaning, the deeper problems, the ongoing problems, do some research papers, on similarities between the prison system and the slavery system, soft slavery as happened after the abolishment of slavery, under Jim Crow laws, that sort of stuff. Wouldn't it be better if we waited until the kids are developmentally ready to deal with that sort of thing, to where it would really stick and be a lesson they would carry with them, instead of just be another thing they remembered for the test and then forgot? So that, I think we need to take a strong look at not trying to teach everything in order from beginning to end according to the age of the child, and instead break it up to what's developmentally appropriate and, developmentally most efficient for them to acquire as far as the language goes. Part B of this, in my program, we practice what is essentially like an a la carte acquisition of courses. And what that means is that, say I have a student that's doing really, really well in math. They are excelling at math. They are killing it in math. And they're in 5th grade. And they move through the math course very quickly and demonstrate mastery of all of those 5th grade math concepts. Well, we move them on to 6th grade pre-algebra, even if they're still in 5th grade. And if they master everything in 6th grade pre-algebra, we move them on to 7th grade pre-algebra, even if they're still in 5th grade. You get the theme that's going on here. The student goes until they reach a point where they have to slow down to get it. And I think that would be incredible. And on the flip side of that, imagine if we didn't force the social progression, if we didn't tie social progression and academic progression to the same thing. Imagine if you have a student that struggles to read, and they are 8 years old and they read at a 2nd grade level. What if they could stay and stick with that 2nd grade level curriculum until they master it and they get up to the 3rd grade, and for their reading class they're in that 3rd grade class and they're working through it until they get up to the 4th grade level, and in the meantime, while they're catching up on their reading, they're in that class for that time, and then they're doing 5th grade math because they're good at math even though they don't read so well, and then maybe they're in 4th grade social studies and 4th grade writing, for an example. That kind of a la carte service, why don't we do that and just let these kids, instead of having this big overall prescription, have the measured goals of where we want them to be and let them move through them at the pace that makes sense for them, and stop making it to be such a big issue of sticking with something until you get it done. Imagine that as a life skill that we taught our elementary schoolers, that it's okay to struggle to learn something, that it's okay to struggle to accomplish a goal, that what matters is that you're working hard and that you eventually achieve it. Imagine, just if you will, the kind of counterpoint that would be against instant gratification culture, where, if you want something and you can't get it within 5 minutes, you either give up on it or you're unhappy and think you've been slighted in some kind of way. Just think about the psychological impact, the psychological durability we would be instilling into our children in a system like that. It could be what changed the world. Followed along with this, the way we assign students to classes also does not make sense to me. I, for example, as a learner, I'm the kind of guy, you put me in an auditorium with somebody who knows their material and is talking about it passionately and is willing to take questions when I have questions. You give me a paper notebook and a pencil, and I will learn everything they have to teach me in very short order, because that's just how I function and function well. I'm very auditory, and I need that kinetic movement of moving my pencil around for retaining and processing that information. It's just how I'm wired. Somebody else, however, might need the big fancy visuals, the PowerPoints. Someone else might need like a physical demonstration thereof, or to do the group work and learn about it socially as they talk with others. So imagine if we took teachers and we identified what their specialty, their natural way of teaching is, and we paired kids by their natural way of learning with the teacher's natural way of teaching and moved them in groups like that. So you have your auditory third grade cohort that is moving through with the auditory third grade teacher, and she stays with those kids and moves forward, say second, third, fourth grade. And because you have the kids that are moving faster or slower in different areas, switching over to the auditory second grade teacher, let's say, and going on, you can kind of see where this is going. This is a system where education is truly individualized towards each student, their strengths, their weaknesses, their needs, all designed around increasing the maximum amount of learning that can occur for that student, which will also, on the back end, when they get up to the higher level schools, put them in a position where, well, if they've already mastered all of the levels of English that they're required to by law, well, now they have a free period and they can pursue something like shop class or another interest-based class, and maybe we can start to bring the trades back into high school, because not everything is devoted simply to writing, reading, and arithmetic and some arts. I don't know how art managed to stay when shop class had to go. Think about what's more useful in the world, the fact that people being able to do their own home repairs or being able to glue two pieces together and make it look pretty. And there's no amount of art classes you're going to take if you're not already leading towards being able to make things look pretty that are going to enable you to make things look pretty. Whereas you could learn the skill of how to fix a table, fix a chair, or do small motor repair without having a strong talent for it. It used to be, the idea of the jack of all trades, master of none. It's shortened. It's a jack of all trades, master of none, still better than master of one. And we could really be producing kids that get down, into their high school and they're working on becoming that, jack of all trades, kind of approach to things where they're able to do things for themselves. And then they would be able to go forward and master one of those things they're already proficient in and turn it into an actual, career, something they can make their livelihood out of. Imagine how many electricians we have out there flipping burgers at McDonald's. How many plumbers do we have stocking shelves at Publix, where if we had been able to expose them to that kind of work in high school, they'd be professionals. Think about the difference in the tax base. Think about the difference in the lives they would be leaving. Think about the difference in the neighborhoods they live in. Think about how much cheaper it would be to hire a plumber for yourself if there were 1,000 plumbers instead of 100 plumbers. Or think about, you wouldn't need to hire a plumber unless it was something that was actually a big job and required somebody who had specialized knowledge to do. Life could be so much better if we changed the way that we approached education. So, these are all things I think we need to change. We need to, change the way we pair students and their teachers, change the way we design the curriculum, change the flow of the curriculum. And last but not least, we need to, we're already doing good at changing the way we deliver curriculum. They're now using Chromebooks that weigh 2 pounds, so the poor little kids don't have to carry around 30 pounds of textbooks and get scoliosis for their trouble. So that's already a step in the right direction. But imagine if instead of the memorization going on, we were teaching kids how to appropriately retrieve information, and maybe we could develop teach them to go to the Library of Congress. Maybe there could be a Department of Education, non-political, non-partisan, this is our resource of all the knowledge, like a government-ran or version of Wikipedia. When I was in college, we had a research database that was full of scientific research papers, and I used to sign in there and read through them for fun when I had off time, and learn the primary source stuff that hadn't made it into the textbooks yet. It was awesome. Imagine having something like that on the high school level, on the secondary level, where, let's say that every American student had access to every scientific peer-reviewed research paper that went on, and all of that was free to students. It's okay to charge people and make money for that sort of thing on the private level and the private interventions, but why wouldn't we want school children to have access to that? It could be such an incredible leap in students learning exactly how they could use the internet. The idea of establishing from a very early age that computers aren't just for fun and games, that the internet isn't just for social hour and looking up the occasional question, but really show them the power of all the knowledge that is out there and online and in their reach, and make sure that they have a safe place to go to get that knowledge. Wouldn't that be a better use of our money than making sure that the latest, highest end, Xerox copiers are in because the other ones are 2 years old and we want new ones? Use the Xeroxes so they break, then replace them. Wouldn't that be more useful than yet another administrative position to hold people accountable on a standardized test? Wouldn't that be more useful than the third version of the standardized test that you're paying? And now you're paying an extra $50 million for the new version, only in 3 years to throw that out and spend another $100 million on the next new version, and just have those costs keep building. Would it not be better? So there you have it. There's my spiel, right offhand on what I think needs to change for education to improve. And if we could do this, we could really, start turning the tables and look at things like flipped classroom models where the students go home to start to acquire new information and they come back to the teacher, because now you've created people who are learners and know how to learn and how to acquire that new information. Now they come back and they discuss it with the teachers to think critically about it through those guided critical thinking exercises until they can do that on their own. There was so much more to be learned. Let's say if I read a book, even now, if I was to, in a professional development course, if I was to read a book and my job was to show up to the class for 45 minutes, read the book for 30 minutes with the teacher, talk about it for 15, go home and come back the next day with some questions answered about what we read, would I learn more doing that, or would I learn more reading the book at home, coming in, discussing everything with the teacher, and then answering the questions, or answering the questions and discussing everything with the teacher, and having more of that interactive time, that natural learning, because kids learn naturally through interacting with adults. They learn naturally interacting with their parents. You don't learn to cook by reading a textbook on cooking. You learn to cook watching mom and dad cook, and then mom and dad show you how to cook. And if they haven't shown you how to cook, you're watching a YouTube video that's interactive on how to cook, and someone talks about cooking. If we used the natural pathways already in our bodies and in our brains and structured the entire idea around education of having a more naturalistic approach to learning, how much more could we learn, especially implementing these other ideas? We are overdue for a reform, and I think we missed a golden opportunity with the pandemic and the lockdowns and everything to have shut it down, completely restructured, come back, shut the schools down for a year, pay the teachers their normal pay. We come back with a completely revamped educational system that actually serves the needs of the kids, that is more resilient and not prone to this. Imagine if we had done that, we come back and now we have an educational system where the teachers and the kids are interacting with each other. The kids are learning more than ever. They're accelerating more than ever. They are happier and more motivated to do school than ever. And at the end of the day, if COVID 2023 turns out to be a thing, it's all a system that could very easily be moved to a virtual model, whereas the current system does not move virtually very easily and becomes very, very cumbersome to try to proceed because you don't have the student buy-in. It could all be so different. And I would love to have an opportunity to see this sort of thing go in and make a change. But, you know, first we need to have teachers making enough money to where they can be secure in, you know, doing things like forming a charter school, a publicly funded charter school, because privately funded ones are usually nightmares, to be a model school for this sort of thing and demonstrate, and to take the chance of failure of trying something new. But, you know, that's, again, a spiel for another day. So thank you for riding along and cruising. It's been fun. I'm sure there's all kinds of other ideas I've got batting around in my head that I haven't talked about yet. But this will be the recording for today. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Please leave a comment. Is there something you want me to talk about? Eventually I'm going to run out of stuff to talk about with education, and we'll get on to some of the current events and other things to discuss. Until next time, guys, enjoy the monsoon weather if you're in Florida.